Cut block, killer cut block, killer cut block, killer cut block.
The 2003 classic Oyohene remix was off Obrafour's Time Out of Adhesion album. What resonated with most lovers of the song back then and now was the Killer Cat intro by Adom-Otchere.
Killer cut block, killer cut block, killer cut block.
Last year, the certified lover boy singer Drake and his team approached Obrafour seeking permission to use the Killer Cat sample in the song, but they were denied.
Killer cut block, killer cut block, killer cut block.
In June 2022, Drake surprised his fans with Nevermind, but for Kenyans, it was a double surprise. On track 6, Calling My Name, Drake sampled the beloved popular song from Obrafour. The sample is found in Drake's tune, where it transitions into house music, the song into a different type of ambience compared to its initial trajectory. Killer Cat is the chant heard multiple times. Obrafour has sued Drake for what his lawyers describe as copyright infringement on the part of the Canadian rapper. In the documents presented to a court in New York, Obrafour stated that Drake infringed on his copyright without permission. The Ghanaian rapper indicated that Drake and other defendants, following the release of Calling My Name, has greatly benefited from his work. Among others, Obrafour is seeking damages in the amount of not less than $10 million. Meanwhile, Adom-Otchere has called out hip life artist Obrafour over the ownership of the Killer Cat sound. According to the founder of Adom-Otchere, he owns the intellectual property rights of the sample Calling My Name song. Ghana's Copyright Office at the Ministry of Justice says Obrafour stands a greater chance of winning the said suit.
Killer cut block, killer cut block, killer cut block.
Killer cat blunt. Is that not what they say? Okay, lawyer. So let's start with the intellectual property regulations in Ghana. Under the Copyright Act you were just telling me. What in the music context is intellectual property?
All right, thank you, Paul. So when we talk about intellectual property rights generally, it includes musical works. So musical works is one of the intellectual property rights in copyright. I mean, you have copyright works, literary works, works of writing, artistic works, musical works, sound recording, and all that. So those are copyright works. And then we have, of course, other industrial property rights, patents, trademarks, and all that. So on another hand. So in terms of music, music is under copyright, which is under the bigger umbrella intellectual property rights generally. Yeah. And for music, for instance, I mean, if you talk about the right in music, then you are talking about the composition, the music composition, right? So the music will have the lyrics, the words, the words, and then the music itself, which is the composition, the melody, and then the harmony and all that.
So carte blanche is what? Melody, composition, music?
Yeah, so it's a musical work, and it's because it's written, there is a distinction between the words and then the music. For there to be a musical work, it may be with or without words. So the musical work, protection for the musical work is
like
the music.
Jazz.
Jazz is music. It's
but
without
there's no words.
Yes, but it's
protected.
That's right. That's right.
So if I do tin 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 tin, and you also do tin 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 tin, and then I can see you.
Yes.
Okay. Let me get Bobby Banson on Zoom, who is a lawyer who has been looking at this as well. He can't join us because he's out of Accra tonight, but he's on Zoom. Let's put him on Zoom. Whilst we do that, let me read this very quickly. It's a text message coming from Adom-Otchere, who seems to know quite about this, a lot about this. Adom-Otchere is a former Joy FM staff, of course, educated at Columbia, and he works for the MPA now. He says, good evening, bro. Obrafour didn't ask Adom-Otchere to do anything for him, and this is in the open. As to whether Adom-Otchere owns the works or not, we shall see in the coming days. No disrespect, but I think lots of people, including lawyers, are misinforming the public on a lot of things. But like I said, the coming days shall reveal everything. The issue wouldn't have gotten to where it is if somebody had not attempted to be wise, smart, and blindsided the author of the works. Hey, there's filler inside though. And he was able to give us a filler. What is this booty about the bush? Tell us the thing well and stop the thing. He said that somebody didn't behave well. Somebody tried to do something. Yeah, okay. Over the coming days, we'll wait to see what happens. Let's go over to Zoom and talk to Bobby Banson right now. And thank you very much, Bobby, for joining us. And I'd like you to focus on that little part. What kind of defenses will be available to Drake? Can he say that the path taken was insignificant?
Good evening, Uncle Paul, and thank you for having me. Good evening to Richard, who happens to be my mate in the law school. The more I read the pleadings filed by Obrafour's lawyers, the more I'm tempted to think that there may be some significant loopholes in what has been filed. First, the issue of whether or not Obrafour is the sole author of that work. And if you listen to the song that is deemed to have been sampled, like you said, it's a phrase. And if you actually go online to listen to Drake's lyrics, he actually does not say kill the cat, he says kill the cop. Now, if you go back to listen to the original sound, you would see that the introduction to that song has the beat, so you can say that, okay, there has been some, not legally, not sampling, but what they call, I think, interpolation or something. And so you'd have to then go to the question of who uttered that voice. Now, in copyright or intellectual property, there are two basic rights, the moral right and the economic right. The moral right is the right of authorship, to say that this is my voice, and nobody else can republish or reproduce my voice in any form, in any manner, without my consent. Now, the economic right is, I may not be the owner of this voice, or I am the owner of this voice, but I'm entitled to receive all the economic benefits from my work, which is my voice. Now, Obrafour has gone ahead to register the copyright in that song in the United States. And that's the second problem I have. On the base or on the, before he did that, he needed to provide to the United States that is the copyright owner of that song. Now, if you look at the pleadings filed by his lawyers, they claim that they have a letter from GAMRO, the Ghana Music Rights, which shows that Obrafour is the copyright owner. Now, Richard will confirm that we have a copyright office that registered copyright. It is not GAMRO. So GAMRO is not the authority that registered copyright owners. And so that is one problem that I have. And so if you have Manche coming to say that, okay, Obrafour may own the song, he is entitled to all the economic benefits from the song, but it is not the whole song that was interpolated or sampled by Drake. It is only the introduction to the song. Now, for those of us who have followed the last two, Hammer's production and the things like that, you notice that in all the hits between 1999 and 2006 from Hammer's studio, most of the songs, not only Obrafour's album, had introductions by Manche. Now, those days, they used to say Manche would just go to the studio, give some voiceovers, then Hammer would choose which songs to put on those voices over. And that is why maybe Manche is saying that I didn't do any work for Obrafour. I gave the voiceovers to Hammer, who is the producer. And so I don't have any relationship with Obrafour. Now, at the time they were making the song, there is something that they call split sheets, which will show that, okay, Hammer did the beat, he's entitled to X% of the economic rights from it. Obrafour is the owner of the song, he may be entitled to X% of the economic right of it. Remember, Tiny is also on that song. He may also be entitled to X%. Then they may say, okay, Manche did the intro. He may also be entitled to 1%. And so, if at the time they did the song, and that is a problem common to these our artists or in our industry, there was no split sheet, then the problem arises now. Because the split sheet will determine the percentage of ownership of that work. Because our Copyright Act and the copyright of the United States law accommodates joint authorship. And so if a song has different parts made by different people, so that the different parts are inseparable from each other, then you can say that the song does not belong to one person. And so I think Obrafour has a hurdle to prove that he is actually the owner of that song. Now, the second hurdle, which may be a defense, is what you've asked, what the lawyers call the diminished principle of a defense. That is whether or not, because before you can prove a right in a song or in a literary work, you must prove that it is original and somebody's other work is derivative from your work. So derivative means that the second work cannot exist as an original work without yours. And I think that is the test that must also be proved. Because like your news reporters, the news story, if you listen to Drake's song, Calling My Name or Calling It, I've forgotten the title, you would ask yourself whether the song retains its originality without that voice, which in Drake's recording mentions it as kill a cop, not kill a cat. Now, if you compare this to Burna Boy's issue with, I think, Tony Braxton, where you see that Burna Boy's song, I think Last or something, you would see that without Tony Braxton's original song, Burna Boy's song may not have that originality. And so that is also a test that I think Obrafour's team would have to scale. That the level of interpolation or sampling may not be significant or may be significant. And we will leave that to the juries. So those are my initial thoughts in terms of defenses that may come up.
Very interesting. Is it going to be a jury trial?
Yes, I think that is what they've asked for. They've asked for a jury trial.
That's complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Wow. And Drake is Canadian and American, or is just Canadian?
To invoke the jurisdiction of the New York courts, they stated that he's resident within the United States. Some of the publishing companies are also registered in the United States. And then he has the works that they are talking about is also targeted to audience in the United States. In terms of the amount that Obrafour is claiming, if you look at the pleadings that the lawyers have filed, they have generalized the revenue streams from the whole Drake album and not only that song. And I think that is also a hurdle because you must also prove the extent of your damage. Because I think the minimum amount, if you're able to prove that there has been a breach, is $150,000. And then beyond that, you must prove the actual economic losses that has occasioned you, that the alleged defaulter has incurred or has gained. Now, it will be difficult to say that the fact that they killed the cop or killed the cat, whether sampling or interpolation, resulted in Drake generating that much money from only that song instead of the whole album. And so they are generalizing the revenues from the whole album instead of that song. And I think that it will be difficult for them to prove that 10 million or any amount close to that or above 150,000 is what the fact that Drake included kill the cop or kill the cat in whatever form, in whatever re-recording or sampling has generated to Drake.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, lawyer. We'll come back to you again. That's very interesting, isn't it? Really, really interesting. And thank you very much, lawyer. Richard, I think you both complimented each other in giving us all the information we need.